Howdy, folks. It is I, the Solo Gamer, back again. And today, we're going to be going on a trip down some serious memory lane action because I recently kind of went on a spree picking up every copy of every game I could find. And I found, among other things, while doing some spring cleaning, one of my all time favorite childhood memories. Now, if you were a kid, this game is an immediate recognition. It is a core memory, especially if you were a Disney kid, which I used to be. As a kid, I loved Disney. As an adult, not so much. That's putting it charitably, but I won't get into detail on that hatred. But that being said, Darkwing Duck was the Disney Batman, if you will. It was an attempt by Disney to take some of its classic Disney characters, specifically the Donald Duck type universe, and run it as a sort of comedic version of Batman. And it works. It works really well. So let's go ahead and boot her up and get started. See how she runs. I am the terror that flaps in the night. I am the winged scourge that pecks at your nightmares. I am Darkwing Duck. And to be fair, for an 8-bit version of this game, of this story, and the music and visuals and everything, they did phenomenally well. Now that being said, Disney was directly involved. They fully cooperated with Capcom on this. And it plays a lot like, it does kind of play a little bit like Mega Man, though not with quite the same arsenal, but now Darkwing has the ability to jump, grapple, and he has the ability to fire blasts from his little cannon. Which they very specifically say in the universe is a gas gun. It does not fire bullets. And into the pit you go. But the game plays very well. Darkwing can block with his cape, he can fire blasts. You can switch to separate different abilities that give you different powers. And the standard gas is his standard weapon. And it's effective, but it's not like it's super powered or nothing. But it does the job. And yes, it is the lemony bloop from Mega Man, of course. Now, to the game's credit, it is fairly forgiving as a game as games go for its era. It's not easy by any means. It's still a Nintendo game, but it's not super hard either. So I have the Thunder Gun Blaster. And you can pick up heavy gas, which increases your firepower. And that the heavy gas does allow you to like do drop bombs, but you trade your weapon. You don't get to keep it the way you used to. And one thing the game is very generous with, it is very generous with health recharges and 1-ups. So now see, I don't remember the game as well as I'd like because it's been forever since I played it. So I need to remember how to play this. The problem is like Crackerjack is a pain in the rear because you gotta force him onto a rail that you're on, and then you gotta get him with the blast and then run away because this little scumbag is constantly giving you shit. Once you get the patterns down, you kind of get it, but it takes a little getting used to. See, my biggest problem is I'm too worried about Crackerjack. I can't get to this little bastard because he's behind the spikes, so I'm stuck. I do not remember how many hits it takes to kill one of these bastards. I just remember you gotta keep hitting them until they finally go down. Getting used to the controls is like half the battle with these games, because they had very specific controls for their era, and it was very hard to get used to. It's actually easier to catch him when he goes up than it is to get him when he's going down, because you have to do 2 steps on that, and it's usually a lot slower to react. Got him. And that's that. But yeah, the game is an absolutely fantastic game, and I highly recommend it if you're a fan of classic old school Disney Saturday morning cartoons and platformers. But it is what it is. Now, moving on. I recently picked up a number of other games from my long-lost collection. And one of them is this. Ikari Warriors Victory Road. Now, this is the lesser-known sequel to Ikari Warriors, and ironically, also kind of lesser-known prequel to The Rescue. Pardon me, needed a drink. But in many ways, it is a continuation of the series. It is also restart. Not interested. But it is arguably one of the more challenging games of its era. Because, like, this time you're going to fight, like, aliens and monsters. This isn't just troopers. You're fighting actual like, aliens and monsters and all kinds of stuff. And it is not easy. Like, this is a challenging game. But it was also different because you weren't... It felt, like, completely disconnected from the original game's style. And it was also much more difficult. I honestly think it's an inferior game. I'm being honest. Like, it just feels completely different. You get one life. You get one life. And if you die or fail, you have to start over. And because of the way the controls work, it's very difficult. Because you can't actually aim the way you're supposed to like you did in the other game. You have to actually use you have to actually turn and then hold the button and turn it and keep firing. Which wouldn't be such a problem, except for the fact that it makes it very hard to align any type of aiming. And because the enemies can come from behind you, it makes it incredibly difficult. You basically have to memorize every enemy placement, every enemy attack, every location, every direction they can come from, and hope that you can just land enough kills that you can just keep going forward. But the game is an undeniably, I mean, it's an intense shooter. It's a over-the-top isometric, but it feels like the game just... Oh, yeah, warp zone. You will get caught in these random warp zones throughout the game. They're supposed to be like bonus levels, but I have no idea how that shit's supposed to work. Because I haven't played this game in like 30 years. There we go. You lost all hearts. It's clear that this game was never meant to run on a Nintendo. Like, it was they were trying to run this thing on a system it was never meant to run on. And yeah, it's an interesting game, but it's a perfect example of how some things just never translated. Now, if you are a fan of the arcades in the 80s or 90s, or if you're a fan of the movie Bloodsport, this is about to look real familiar to you. Karate Champ. Now, to be fair, this is one of, if not the first proper 1v1 fighting games. And for its time, it was incredibly well done. But it definitely lacked like a... There were definitely problems. Though to be fair, it's pretty impressive that they actually had functional voice work on an NES game. Oh, got me. And to be fair, this was the first time two people could play against each other in this format. Now, I don't know that I'd call the game good. I'd say it's okay for its era. But it's one of those things where, like, I would argue that until Street Fighter 2, the fighting game genre would really live on in the PC realm because a lot of interesting games came out for that era. And if they ever get to work, there's a project to make One Must Fall open source and fully functional. And if they ever manage to get that to work, I will show that. But unfortunately, it's still a very early prototype. They've got the basic stuff down, but they haven't been able to get the actual like specialized tournament mode. And yeah, that's really all there is to it. Like, Karate Champ is incredibly simple. One of Data East's earliest projects. A very simple, very basic 2D fighting game with some pretty interesting mechanics, but very, very sort of... I'd be lying if I said this game didn't have its problems. It had its problems. It absolutely did. And all of it was that it had no like properly established control scheme. Like, you had no idea how half this crap worked half the time. You were just flailing angrily to try and land a blow. But yeah, it worked. It was simple, but it worked. Now, let's get to some real history. The arcades saw many of their games translate over to the Nintendo, and usually it was a bad translation or a minimalist translation. Poorly done, minimal graphics, bare bones. Yet there were some games where the crossover worked, and worked beautifully. Legendary Wings, another Capcom creation, is one of those games. It had what was at the time some immensely good audio. It was also extremely difficult for its era. Like, getting through the levels was a pain in the rear on its own. Until you got like the actual power-ups. And then everything changed, because now the power-ups basically leveled the playing field. If you had the power-ups, you could basically turn the battle in your favor. Didn't make it easy. Freaking laser cannon. Not sure what that's supposed to be, but it was like, yeah, no, I'm just rapid firing everything into a non-existence. And here was an interesting thing. You didn't die if you got hit. You went down a level, kind of like Dino Reiki. The difference was, as well, Dino Reiki involved platforming and other items that made the game exceptionally hard. This game didn't. It was all airborne. It was a literal overhead shooter. And it was also a very fun game. Two players especially. Like, one player's fine. Like, the one player stuff is fun, but it's like it's just a shooter at that point. It was also notable that it was one of the few games in which death was not a level restart. You picked up immediately where you left off, and you could just go forward. Honestly, I should have let that wind gust hit me, but I'm just doing a quick demonstration run. Whoa, what the freaking heck? And I'm dead. But yeah, this game was a challenge. And I'd be the first to tell you that. Because there is no denying that this game was hard fought. Now it was fun, don't get me wrong. And back in the heyday, when I was still like, I still had my youthful energy, I could tear through this thing no trouble. I knew every enemy position, I knew every enemy setup, I could identify every enemy target, I knew exactly how to maneuver around them, I knew exactly where to be to get the best power-ups. But that was, again, 20, 30, 40 years ago almost. I mean, I was literally a child when this shit came out. Now I'm going to let this guy hit me this time. If he hits you with the wind gust, you get pulled into him, and you have to fight your way through. And this is one of the game's neat features. You're now in a horizontal scrolling battlefield, completely different from the overhead. And you don't have your bombs now; it's just straight up laser blaster. Which, to be fair, if you have this weapon, it makes this level fairly easy. Like, this isn't difficult with this gun. If you have the regular blasters or even the twin shooters, it's much more difficult. It's freaking laser cannon is what this feels like it's supposed to be. But yeah, the whole premise of the game, the reason it's called Legendary Wings, boils down to the fact that these guys have wings. Wings, and apparently that makes them some sort of heroes. You know, they've got wings, give them guns, and they go deal with problems. And honestly, yeah, I kind of get it. See, now I got the twin lasers, and it's not as effective. And now you can actually turn directions in this level. I will never understand why his colors are now pink. I know the reason for it technically is because the limited color palette of the NES meant they could only do so much with the visuals. But if you watch, when he comes back out into the regular game, he's red. Now there are two types of secondary levels. There's that type where it's the threat level, where you have to actually... Oh, see? Free life. And then there's the secret levels where if you blow something up and a wind blast comes out of it, let it hit you. It's usually a bonus level. And you usually get a lot of good... You can usually get a lot of good stuff from it. Yeah. Now, one thing I will say is that to have any prayer of winning, you typically have to have at least one level of upgrade. Because the regular levels just will not cut it. Lucky. This is bonus time. Which, if you were good, these levels could give you enough lives to make it to the end of the game if you were skilled enough. Also, one of the first time I remember having like Egyptian motifs in a game. Or maybe that's just my memory, but this is the first time I really remember these motifs being present. Mind you, when this game came out, I had the barest inkling Like, when did this game come out? 1987? I was like 6. I had the barest inkling of what Egyptian was at even the most base level. So, like, this was all very, very new to me. Super cool, though. Although I don't remember the Egyptians having nukes as part of their iconography. There it is. That's the big gun. This is essentially the clean sweeper. If you're playing the game with this bad boy, it was essentially a wiper. It obliterated everything. Now, to its credit, this game was always a challenge, but it gave you the opportunities to have the tools to win. And if you knew how, a victory was possible. It was just challenging. No easy mode, no easy mode, no hand holding. You just had to be good. And if you were good, you'd make it through, typically. But it is super hard. And there are times when you will just be getting hammered left, right, and center. Apparently I've pissed off the local dragon. But that's okay. I've got a few extra lives to work with. Now, if I had the full power weaponry, he'd already be dead. Like, no joke, he'd have been annihilated within the first volley. But because I got knocked down to baseline, I'm sort of surviving just on my own here. I gotta just keep... One of the biggest problems with this game is you never knew how much it took to kill one of these guys. There's actually I forget where it is, but there's a table now where someone actually went through and figured out exactly how much damage every single boss or target takes and what it takes to put them down rapidly. But, like, there's no color change. There's no indication he's taking damage. You just keep hitting him until he explodes. And off he goes. Rush courageously. So yeah, that's legendary wings for you. A good, solid shooter that I think many people missed out on. Now let's go to another shooter that's very legendary, but not quite the way most people envisioned it. RoboCop. But first, I'm gonna break these up into smaller chunks so I can keep them steady. And this video is at about 30, but we'll continue with RoboCop in the next video, and you can see for yourselves what was a huge part of my childhood. See you then. Solo Gamer will return.